So we can all get out of here before the weather gets weird. The weather's weird. Like it's going to potentially get supposed to get weirder, right? Right. If you don't like the weather, wait a minute.
Thank you.
Hey, how are you? That was pretty relaxing. Yeah. I don't get that very often, so I get excited. See, Sherry. There's my. So watch what you say. That's my baby there. I'm thinking of getting a single seat for it. That's why I was thinking about going to the swap meet, because I want to look for one of those bobber seats for it.
Yeah, well, you know, you've got the flea market.
Right. The flea market is this weekend? Is that the swap meet flea market thing?
I think it's 27, 28, something like that.
So not this weekend, next weekend.
I think I wrote it wrong though, but it's coming up.
Yeah, and I was thinking that would be a good place to look for one of those bobber seats.
It's kind of a small scale thing, but there's a collection of hodgepodge and,
Right, stuff.
and resale stuff.
Yes. Thank you. She gets here before the
Got some
meeting.
of my gear too.
Cool. Like leathers and stuff?
Yeah, I got like insulated pants there, and I got a jacket there, and
Did you see Pastor Bus is here? He's giving you
why did that thing go?
over the corner. He's smiling. Well, if you stay for a minute, the meeting's going to start. He's going to give the prayer at the beginning of the meeting. So you can sit and hear his prayer and then slip out if you wanted to. No, you can't. You just sit by the doors. Like, if you're going to sneak out after the invocation, sitting by the door is my... Sherry, this is my daughter, Ruthie. Ruthie,
You
this
see
is
that
Sherry.
exit sign back there on the left?
There you go. Sit by there.
That, if you sit near that chair, you got to direct out without being disruptive.
Then you can hear Pastor Bus talk before you go. That'll be nice.
It's a good escape out.
Thank you for bringing me my cord. Yeah, the one that's not open.
Hi there, how are you? What?
I'm heading in that direction of my office.
I am too. I think I figured that, kiddo.
Yeah. What's that? Yes. But I get buried under a pile of stuff, and then like I moved it to the top, and then I put it on the calendar, and then I fluffed it to the top again, and it's getting complicated by this surgery that I'm having. I'm having surgery on my labrum on the 26th. The torn labrum. I've been limping around with a torn labrum all year, pretty much. And I'm having surgery on it the 26th.
You should see what they've done.
So I'm hoping that. No, I'll be fine. They say they want you. The best outcome is to get moving. Yeah. So the best thing, the best thing I can do is just get moving as best I. So that's my plan. In fact, when she was coming to talk about when you and Kathy and I are going to get together for that land use powwow, I even suggested the 27th because I don't have to work. I'm pretty sure I can't sit at work all day, but we could sit down for an hour probably. I could limp over and sit down for an hour. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah, she's having a hard time coordinating these things, these meetings. Right. Right. Isn't there some kind of a questionnaire or something we can fill out?
He's not here. Carl's not here.
You might want to sign this in last time either.
I just figured that.
This is not the one.
Good evening, everyone. If I could call the January board meeting to order. Oh, wait a minute. It's really April. It just feels like January. Sorry. April 18th meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance and then have a seat, and we'll hear a few words from one of our local esteemed colleagues.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We are blessed to have Pastor Alan Buss of Emmanuel Lutheran here in Belvedere to join us this evening to tell us a little bit about Emmanuel and their mission and things that they are doing in our community, and also lead us in the opening invocation.
We'd be honored, and we want to, on behalf of Emmanuel, I would like to thank all of you who are sitting up here doing your job, and we especially thank you when you disagree, but you're not disagreeable, and we know that's always the case, right? But the Bible says this: the wise walk with the wise and become wiser still. And so my mission is to walk with wise people. And we pray that that would also be for you as well. That you would walk with the wise, that you would find the wisdom, that you'd bring out the best in each other, and especially bring out the best in our community. The wise walk with the wise and become wiser still. And the Bible has a lot to say about what happens to fools. But we know there's none here, right? So I shared with you a handout what our congregation is going to be doing here in a couple of weeks, and that is Celebrate Community, 3 hours. It's food, there's some service projects that are happening, and some play. And it's open to everybody. I know we have some community organizations that are going to be involved in that, and we want to make our community better, and so that's one way that we are investing in the community. For 60 years, Emmanuel School has been in existence, and that ministry continues to bless many in our congregation. And I know some of you come for the north part of the county, and we have in the strip mall up there in Poplar Grove what's called Emmanuel North, and they worship 60 to 80 people on a weekend. But we also wanted to reach out right across from the mobile home park there. Probably the last few years, one of the things that has had the most impact in this community, Rockford, and recently Las Vegas, when there was the shooting down in Florida, is our Comfort Dog ministry. The most popular members of our staff are Kai and Becca, 2 dogs that are very expensive dogs, but they go out and serve. They were in Chicago today, but they especially serve in our community. They've served in other local churches, and so we are grateful to bring that to the community as well. And they've been there when we've lost some children in the community in crisis situations. And so, lastly, just a reminder that Helping Hands is an ecumenical endeavor that is in our Crown Point building just off of 2nd Street. And we're doing something new with Helping Hands, and that is we have a paper closet. Members of our congregation figured out that people who are maybe less fortunate cannot use their state, I don't know exactly what it's called, their link card or whatever, for paper products. And so we started a paper closet that helps people with their paper needs. So lastly, probably the most exciting thing for the people at Emmanuel's, they'll be looking for a new senior pastor here soon. I was elected to a denominational role, and so I'm going to be finishing up my responsibilities at Emmanuel at the end of May. We got a senior interim pastor coming up. And but my family and I like the community so much that at least for the near future, we're going to remain in this community, although I assure you I am not running for the county board. Okay, I'll have enough responsibilities. But for the past 17 and a half years, I've had the privilege of serving Emmanuel and serving this community. I hope to continue to serve as the fire department chaplain, and I thank you for serving, and thank many of these folks for serving. So if we could pray, I would love to do that. Thank you for the invitation, Mr. Chairman. Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for the gift of today. Now, we would all be appreciating probably warmer, sunnier weather. But as the psalmist says, this is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Today some of us have laughed and others of us have cried. We pray for the well-being of this community, the people of this community. We pray for our first responders, that you would keep them safe, that you would help them do their jobs well. We also pray, Lord, for their families. We pray for the children in our schools, whether it's at St. James, Emmanuel, the other schools, the community, our community schools. We pray for the churches of our community, that they would speak a strong and a bold and a faithful message, a message that ultimately brings us to Christ. But for these board members, that they would walk with the wise, that they would be wise, that when they disagree, they would disagree as people who are secure, people who are understanding, and people who always have the best interest of our community in mind. We pray for the well-being of these board members, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. We pray for the state of Illinois and all our leaders, and may our leaders serve the community more than they serve themselves. And for our national government, may they serve the common good. And we pray that you would raise up among us, especially in Washington, statesmen and stateswomen who honor God, who honor the Constitution, and serve our common good. We give you thanks for every blessing, and we ask this all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Pastor Buss, before you take off and run to service that you have in just a few short minutes, on behalf of the board and Boone County, I would like to thank you for all your years of service at Emmanuel, all that you've done for the community, all you've led that congregation to do in our community, and we wish you nothing but the best and Godspeed and good luck in your new endeavor. Next. That's how I knew you'd keep it short tonight.
Always doesn't work, Carl, does it?
Next up, roll call, please.
Carl Johnson.
Here.
Sherry Branson.
Here.
Jeff Carlisle.
Here.
Denny Ellingson.
Here.
Sherry Gieske.
Here.
Carl Larson. Ray Larson.
Here.
Jessica Muehlner.
Here.
Marshall Newhouse.
Here.
Bernard O'Malley.
Here.
Brad Stark.
Here.
Kathy Ward.
Here.
I would accept a motion to approve the agenda. Motion by Mr. Carlisle, second by Ms. Gieske. Any discussion or? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'd accept a motion to approve the March 21st County Board minutes. Motion
Second.
by Mr. Carlisle, second by Mr. Stark. Any comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Appointments. There are several appointments. I hope you had a chance to look at them. You should have received letters or copies of the letters that everyone who is being appointed sent in, along with any additional letters, even for those who are not being appointed, who also submitted. There is one appointment I'd like to hold back at this point, just because I'm still in the process of gathering some information I thought I was going to be able to have to her beforehand, just to make sure that it's going to work in her schedule. And that would be on the Housing Authority, Karen Nybarger. I'd like to hold her back for this month, just so I can get her the information to make sure that she can make the meetings and have the time to dedicate to it that she really wants to. She's very interested in being part of that, but we just want to make sure it's going to fit in her schedule. So if we could do that, I would appreciate that. Is there any discussion or comments on the, I guess I'd accept a motion to approve the appointments.
I would make a motion to approve.
Motion by Jessica Milner, seconded by Mr. O'Malley.
Need a point
Yes,
of
sir.
order?
Yes, sir.
Do you want that as amended to remove Karen, or is that just understood?
I'm being told we should have an amendment.
All right, I would move to amend the motion to remove Karen Nybarger, if that's pronounced correctly.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Newhouse, seconded by Mr. Stark. Discussion? All, Ms. Ward?
I just have one question. It says Todd Ingres, a 3-year term.
Well, we'll get to that in a moment.
Okay.
We're just going to vote on the amendment for,
Okay, that's fine.
any other discussion on the amendment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So the motion is amended, removing Karen Nybarger from that for this month, and she'll probably be on hopefully next month. Now, Ms. Ward, you had a question on Todd Endress?
Right, from the election, I'm understanding that they will be elected beginning next year. This says a 3-year term, so tell me
That's-
how that works, sir.
I wish I could tell you all the details. All I know is that as of this point, they're still being appointed, so it would be appointing for a 3-year term. Obviously, once they're elected, I would assume that that supersedes that. I do not know if they'll all be elected at the same time or if they'll be elected after the terms are up. I don't know those details. I believe they'll all be elected next year, but I've also heard counter opinions that might be, people have told me other things. So we'll let the state's attorney figure all that out when the time comes.
Okay.
And then any other questions as far as Todd Endress? I'm appointing him to fulfill the remainder of the term for Mr. Stark, and then also the new term that would have been one had Mr. Stark been reappointed. So the same, that way, the reason being there is that the district is in a position where they really need to start making some decisions on some things. So we're hopeful that they can go ahead and get started right away on doing things that they need to do. Any further discussion? Ms. Gieske?
Is there a residency, do you have a residency requirement for these folks?
As far as living in Boone County?
Right. This Matt Zickert lives in Rockford.
Well, it's a Rockford address, but I believe he lives in Boone County.
We believe he does.
I am pretty certain, judging by my evaluation of the map and judging the county lines, it sure appeared to me that he was in Boone County.
I'm
So,
sorry, I just looked at the address.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Any other discussion? All in favor of the appointments, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I do believe we have at least a couple of the folks here. Matt Zickert, you are here, correct? Would you care to come up, just introduce yourself up here at the podium real quick and say hi, and if anybody has any quick questions they'd like to ask him, like if he lives in Boone County?
Not that you need this, I've heard
set
you
me
speak
up.
before.
My name's Matt Zickert. I do live in Boone County.
Excuse me, Mr.
With
Zickert.
the Rockford address.
If we could get you to use the microphone, not because everybody can't hear you, but we need to record it, so.
I'm sorry. Yes, my name is Matt Zickert, and I do live in Boone County. It's an anomaly where I do have a Rockford address, but my kids all attended Belvedere schools, K through 12, so, and I did pay my property tax bill. So I knew I live in Boone County.
We have the details out of the way, so
There we go. Any questions for Mr. Zickert at all?
thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking time to come down.
No, it's fine, have a good day.
I believe Miss Jackie is here also. She was trying to hide in a corner.
Hi, I'm John Jackie. I am the CEO at the Belvedere YMCA, and then I also live in Belvedere. So, any questions?
Questions? Comments? I don't see any tomatoes either, so
Thank you.
thank you very much for coming down.
Glad to have you.
Any of our other appointees able to make it? I don't see any in the audience. Sheriff, do you want to talk just because you always like to talk?
You got a ticket coming your way after that one.
Yeah.
Oh, don't worry. I'm sure I'll get it tenfold sometime.
Getting snarky.
All right. Next up, Health Department.
Chairman, you spoke a little too soon because actually Sheriff is playing a part in this recognition tonight, so he is gonna get to speak.
Go figure.
Good evening, County Board and members of the public. I'm Amanda Mail with the Boone County Health Department, and I have the distinct pleasure and honor to introduce our special guest from the Illinois Department of Public Health, who is here to provide some special recognition for a staff member of mine. And I'd like to just start out by saying that usually I'm the one that is the face of the organization at meetings or involved in activities out in the community, but the work that we're doing at the health department would not be possible without the fantastic achievements of each and every one of my staff. We are a team together, and we are working hard to improve the lives of the 54,000 people that live in Boone County. And so tonight we are going to be recognizing Ellen Genrich. And Ellen has been with the Boone County Health Department since the year 2000, and she has played a variety of professional roles, including, and I'm not going to list them all off, emergency response coordinator, public information officer, health educator, family case management, caseload coordination, environmental health inspection officer, office go-to person, and then there are more, but we'll leave it at that. So she wears many hats on a daily basis with us at the health department. Ellen is always willing to take on a new challenge, step up and cover a project or help a coworker when needed. She really embodies the sense of teamwork and believes in the mission of public health. When I asked her why she works at the Boone County Health Department and why she works in public health, she said, "I work in public health because I want to impact the health and safety of our community in meaningful and measurable ways. In other words, to make a real difference in real people's lives." I don't know about you all on the board, but those are the types of folks that I like to employ in my department. And so tonight we're going to recognize Ellen for her outstanding achievement of co-author of the article Fostering Interprofessional Education through a Multidisciplinary Community-Based Pandemic Mass Vaccination Exercise article, which was published last month in the American Journal of Public Health. And this article describes the 4-year experience of novel health professional, student-driven, community-based pandemic planning exercise that serves as a platform for providing healthcare services and immunizations to the uninsured and underserved. So to clarify that, because that was a mouthful, the article highlights the work that we do every year at our community-based free flu clinic, and it is designed as a mock emergency preparedness exercise that we do with local law enforcement, and we practice with student pharmacists, student nurses, and student MDs to prepare as if we had to vaccinate the entire county in a matter of a few days. So this is very important work that we're doing, and what I really want to draw the board's attention to is the fact that this article draws not just state attention, but this draws national attention and recognition to efforts being done in Boone County, Illinois. Okay, so if people didn't know where Boone County was on the map before, if they've read this article, maybe they know a little bit about us now. So that's an extremely big deal for us as a county, and I'm very proud to be a part of an organization that is achieving national recognition through the work of my staff. So I have asked the sheriff to make a few comments on the work that Ellen does with law enforcement related to these emergency preparedness exercises.
As I was coming in the door today, actually, so I can say a couple of nice things. She's a wonderful person, and she has no criminal record, so congratulations. That's awesome. I would tell you she's actually outstanding. I've worked with her personally since she's been here. She's definitely a mover and a shaker. Whether you want to do the project or not, she wears you down until you finally just have to give in and do it. I will tell you she's extremely passionate about the job, and it's really, it's to be around her. It's very exciting to be part of that, trying to make a difference in the community, and she truly does it for the right reasons. So we are really thrilled. No matter how many times she shakes us down for things to do, we still love her, and she does a fantastic job, and she does the right thing for Boone County's very, very lucky to have her.
Thank you. Okay, and to present the recognition tonight, yeah, we could clap more than once. Yeah, let's go. So to present the state recognition to Ellen Genrich this evening, I would like to invite Masood Altar, medical doctor and master's in public health from the Illinois Department of Public Health. He has come specially tonight for this recognition.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me? Now you can. All right, it's my pleasure and honor to be here this evening. And Boone County, for a long time, has been giving now and then, and provides reason for me to be proud of the region. And I'm really privileged that I've been working with the Boone County for last more than 15, 16 years, since I've been appointed as an emergency response coordinator for Northern Illinois. And with the time, Ellen Genrich got younger, me older, lost my hair. She is a very diligent and hardworking public health professional, dependable and always ready to help others. And the recently published article in American Journal of Public Health Practice is an example for her high academic standards and demonstrates her extraordinary capabilities and effort to reach out the community, especially to the underserved population. And they have been doing it for last 6-7 years, and they provide every year vaccination to underserved community. Unfortunately, because of funding, we couldn't carry out this on the regional basis, but still some of the health department, including Boone County, is providing every year vaccination to underserved community. I am here on behalf of IDPH and personally as well to recognize Ellen Genrich and Boone County for this outstanding achievement. And I have no hesitation in saying that Boone County has given some of the best practices, not only to the state, but to the nation. And I see great progress under the leadership of Amanda, and since she has joined the Boone County as an administrator. There are, I think, 5-6 pages more to I keep mentioning all the time, everywhere, that the longevity what we enjoy is because of public health. And clean environment, safe food, clean water, proper disposal of waste, immunization, safer highways. Frankly, no offense to any physician friend. I belong to that community as well, but when I see that the physicians, they treat a patient, individual patient, they get, somebody walks in the ER, being treated, goes out, and the patient, and you have sort of a gratitude from them, and you also feel satisfied that you did something, immediately you get some reward out of that. But public health, they do the thing, they don't know for whom they are doing, they do for the community, and they are not really very well recognized. That's what I feel. And they need really recognition every now and then. And for last so many years, if you see, I'll give you an example of smoking. The first article, which was published in 1951, and it took 60-70 years to make the public realize that smoking is injurious to health. So whatever public health does, it takes generations to implement that and get the results. And that's probably the reason that they are not being well recognized. But they always work behind the scene. And I wish all the best with the Boone County and Ellen. Keep it up. Good work. And I have great regard for public health professionals, as I said, and working with them gives me some unique opportunity to learn about public health concerns at the community level. And at the end, I would say that if you want to live longer and healthier and safe, invest in public health. That's what my advice tonight for all of you. And be safe and healthy. Thank you very much. In 2018 Outstanding Employee, the Boone County Health Department recognizes Ellen Genrich for her invaluable contributions to the Boone County Health Department, signed by Amanda, 4/18/2018. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ellen, on behalf of everybody up here at, on the board, congratulations on a job well done. For the record, I'd like to note that Mr. Carl Larson joined us at 6:53 p.m. Next up, public comment. I don't have any slips. Is there anybody in the public that would like to make any comments? No, don't see anybody. Council on Aging.
Thank you. We did meet Monday night. I think things are going extremely well. The state's staying paid up. The transportation effort that's being put out is continuing to get more riders. They're also taking on another effort, working toward doing some things about dementia, and I think you'll be seeing more things come down the road from the Council on Aging, working in that area and trying to help out with challenges in the county that way.
Thank you, Mr. Ellingson. Growth dimensions.
Good evening. I understand spring is coming next week. Truly, I heard it in the news just before I came in. It's going to be in 60s. So this is actually perfect timing for our spring reception next Thursday night. We have a dinner with our presenter, being Manley Feinberg II. He's from Build-A-Bear, and he brought that company, well, he originally was from Build-A-Bear, I'm sorry. He brought that company from 40 to 400 stores worldwide, and from 55 million to over 474 million in his time there. We are very fortunate that our investors and the business table sponsors have donated some of those tickets back to the organization, so we can extend the opportunity to offer those tickets to other organizations have limited budgets, as well as nonprofit organizations. So please reach out to your departments and your offices and let us know if you're able to attend. We have had, we're trying to assess what we have done over the past year. Since January 2018, in our enterprise zone projects, we've had 8. We've had $355,000 worth in construction and over $1 million in total investment. We try to assess in the year past what we to present, what has been our impact, and we've had 43 projects in Boone County over the past year, and estimating about 600,000 square feet of development. This is over 89 million, in investment to our area, including 5 manufacturing, 4 in healthcare, and 34 in commercial and retail development. So this is quite substantial. We're having tomorrow we're having a meeting in the Chicago metro area to try to encourage site selectors and developers to learn more about our region. Their discussions with them over the past few weeks have identified that qualified sites, and identifying what qualified sites and having them shovel ready is still important to them. However, just as important are to have our TIF districts and enterprise zone programs in place. So we'll be working with the county and the city of Belvidere in order to identify those locations and potential programs that we can apply for and qualify for in order to intrigue developers and site selectors to consider Belvidere and Boone County as a prime location to start a business. We have been working with a project quite deeply. It's called Project Alpha. I had brought it to this board in the past. This is 200 to potentially 300 positions in the automotive sector. It is not related to the FCA at this time. They have multiple locations throughout the United States. We have submitted a competitive incentive plan to the company, and we're looking to follow up later this week. This can potentially mean about 358,000 square feet of development, with the possible expansion years out, additional 142,000. So this is quite substantial for us, for our area. We're working on a number of other projects, but this is probably the largest, which will bring the biggest impact to our area. Are there any questions? Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I hope to see you next week then.
Casa, Charlotte's here.
Hello. As I hope you know, April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. We had our banner across State Street, so I hope you were able to see that the last couple weeks. We are currently serving 44 children. We did receive 4 new child cases in the past month, so it's been an interesting time assigning those to new advocates. We do have 22 advocates with 20 currently having cases. We will have a training class starting within the next month or so, so if anyone is interested in becoming an advocate or know of anybody who's interested in becoming an advocate, please have them call me. Other than that, we are still just planning away for our celebrity roast and getting sponsorship forms and letters mailed out here within the next week or two, and plugging away at that. So that's what's going on in the CASA office.
Questions for CASA? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Looks like we have Board of Health again. I think the sheriff's starting to get somebody, give him a run for his money for microphone time.
Okay. Good evening again. Just a couple quick highlights. I'm going to keep this brief. April 2nd through 8th of 2018 was National Public Health Week, and the theme for this year was Healthiest Nation 2030. I will pass around a handout that highlights the events of the week and the different health topics that were covered Monday through Friday of Public Health Week. And on Friday, the theme was Advocate for Everyone's Right to a Healthy Life. And the Boone County Health Department submitted an article that was put out through the Illinois Department of Public Health's website highlighting our chronic disease screening program that we offer. And so that received some state-level recognition in honor of Public Health Week. And then the program that I would like to just briefly touch on tonight is actually not a health department program, but it is a task force that has been formed and going now for exactly a year this month, and that is the Boone County Behavioral Health Task Force. And we meet monthly here in the county boardroom, and the health department chairs the task force, but it is a partnership with Boone County Sheriff, Boone County State's Attorney, Boone County Probation, Boone County Public Defender, Belvedere Police and Fire, both school districts, all 3 health systems, Remedies, Renewing Lives, Rosecrance, and some of our faith-based organizations. And I know I'm missing a few folks, but we have a lot of our EMS and first responders that participate in that as well, Boone County Jail, Belvedere Mayor. So it's a group that's been meeting now for about a year, and we are addressing this growing concern of opioid misuse, opioid addiction, and opioid overdose and death. So in Boone County, our non-fatal overdose rate is actually higher than the state average, and I know that you all are well aware of this concern because month after month, Sheriff comes up here and provides recognition for one of his officers that has saved the life of somebody who was overdosing due to an opioid overdose. So it's a growing concern in our community. Over the last year, Boone County's rate of addiction has grown 175%, numbers of opioid misuse and overdose in this county. So that is a startling figure. I'm very concerned about that. In fact, at our forum today, preceding this meeting, when we talked about health prioritization, going forward both for the Boone County Comprehensive Plan and for the health department's I-Plan process, behavioral health needs and mental health and addiction and substance abuse was in the forefront of a lot of the conversations. So this task force has been working hard to basically design a needs assessment and a gap analysis to figure out where within our criminal justice system, our community partners, our local law enforcement, and the work that we're already doing, where are there additional needs that need to be addressed and identified to provide services to this population. And we are preparing a final executive summary and document that will be ready most likely in the next couple months. We're in the draft revision stage as a task force. And then our plan after that will be to work collaboratively to apply for some federal level Department of Justice grants to bring some federal dollars here to our local community to address this growing epidemic. So I'm pretty pleased to say that almost every Boone County department head is involved in this process because it's very multi-sectoral. We're very concerned about the law enforcement aspect of it, the healthcare piece of it. And I should have mentioned also that our GIS department is doing some mapping for where the overdoses are occurring. So GIS is also involved, and our court system, of course, and our jail. So the health department is going to be offering some free Narcan trainings that are open to the public in the month of May. I did bring a few color copies. I will pass them around. You're welcome to take one. There are 5 dates, and I selected one date to be Wednesday, May 16th at 5 p.m., so it'll happen right before the next county board meeting in the attempt to make it easy for you to attend one if you would like. These are open to the public, and you'll be provided with training on how to save somebody's life utilizing Narcan. It's a nasal spray. It's something you can carry the kit in your car. You'll be given a free kit. I would encourage you to invite your neighbors, invite your colleagues, invite anybody that you feel would like to go through this training. There's no cost, and it's covered by grant funds through Sinisippi Centers. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. The last comment that I wanted to make related to substance abuse is that in the state of Illinois right now, currently the Boone County Health Department is monitoring a synthetic cannabis or cannabinoid outbreak. We have had 141 cases and 3 deaths in the state of Illinois in the last 3 weeks, and this is a synthetic cannabis product that is laced with chemicals such as rat poison, and it is causing severe bleeding and death. And luckily we have not had one in our county, but we are still monitoring it, and 141 deaths in 3 weeks, or 141 cases and 3 deaths in 3 weeks is pretty alarming. So I don't know if there's any questions from the board. Just wanted to highlight some of the behavioral health and substance abuse work that not only the health department is doing, but that your Boone County governmental system is doing together. So,
Putting rat poison in a substance you're going to inhale sounds like a lousy recipe. Why? Does it provide a kick for the individual, or what prompted someone to decide rat poison in a synthetic product like that?
well, it's a chemical, and it works similar to how warfarin works in the body, so it's a blood thinner. And really, the substance abuse can range from anything from snorting or sniffing any type of chemical. So it's a similar concept that if you sniff enough of a chemical, whether it's a glue or an over-the-counter cleaning supply, that you can essentially get a high off of that. And so it's part of that concept.
All right. Can I do one more?
Dr. O'Malley?
Yeah, what it does is it binds the proteins and makes the active drug stay in your system longer, so it prolongs your high. If you talk to drug people, they had very elaborate formulas on how they do these things. They just overdosed it. But this is a way to make the drug give you a longer high.
Good Lord.
Mr. Newhouse?
I don't know whether this goes to you or to the sheriff, but for the overdoses that have been occurring, I don't even know how to ask the question, but is it a question of volume of material that the person takes in always, or are there enough variabilities in the intensity of what people are taking in that they're overdosing when they don't understand what they're taking in, or is there any way of quantifying that?
Well, there's a variety of different prescription pain medications that contain opioids. And then we also have on our hands nationwide the issue of IV heroin use. So those two things combined are what are causing these staggering, alarming rates of overdose and of addiction. 80% of the folks that are now addicted to heroin started with a prescription pain pill that was written for them by a medical doctor, by a DO. So that's a concern because it has to do with related to our healthcare system and our pharmaceutical system, that we would have a concern that it is a highly addictive substance, and it would be very easy to take an extra pill or two, even on accident, and have an overdose. So it ranges anywhere from prescription pain medications that you might be prescribed after a back surgery or work injury, all the way to purchasing IV heroin on the street, which is a lot cheaper. So a lot of people switch to that because it's a more affordable way to continue the addiction. It's very hard to kick the habit, even if you started to kill pain after like a surgery. Then once you're hooked, it's very hard to stop. So.
Further questions for the health department? Thank you very much, man. Next up, Regional Planning Council. I was out of town at their last meeting. Mr. Terranoni?
I have no report.
Thank you very much. Next up, I would accept a motion to approve the general consent items.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Stark, seconded by Ms. Ward. Any discussion? I would like to, as normal, point out those that have donated. Appears once again to the Animal Services Department. So we'd like to thank, for the record, Robert and Christine Bulgeman, Margie Carlson, Belvedere Moose Lodge, number 295, Manchester Elementary School, Dolly McCullough, and I'm really going to butcher this name, Jeffrey and Lexi Cataccio, I guess. Let's go with that. Ms. Ward.
I'd just like to add, I can't remember the exact figures. Maybe Jeff does. They're about 1,000 ahead of last year, aren't they, Jeff?
Oh, yes.
Some, or maybe more than that even. They're doing very well.
Wonderful. Mr. Newhouse.
For people who donate, some people don't mind having the recognition. Some people would prefer not to have recognition. Is there a issue of transparency if someone donates and wants to do it anonymously, or does the name have to come forward?
I think that would be a state's attorney question, or Mr. Terranoni's waving.
I can tell you what we've done in the past. When we've had occasional donors that wish to be anonymous, we just indicate anonymous.
There we go. Anything else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. PZB, Mr. Ellings.
We have nothing to offer tonight.
Finance, Ms. Gieske.
Item 10.1 is a motion to approve claims with the understanding that Carl Johnson abstains from voting on all claims presented by William Charles and Associates, and Denny Ellingson abstains from voting on all claims presented by Conserv FS. This was approved in committee 5-0.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Gieske, seconded by Mr. Carlisle. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Sherry Branson,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Gieske,
Yes.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Milner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Brad Stark,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Carl Johnson.
Yes. Motion carries.
Item 10.2 is a motion to approve a scope of services from Staff Management Incorporated for compensation plan design services in the amount to be determined. There was no vote taken.
Motion by Ms. Gieske. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. O'Malley. Mr. Terranoni, do we have a total?
Sure. Today, the chairman, finance chairman, Ms. Gieske, and I met with the consultant, Mr. Castry, to try to isolate the type of scope of work that we thought would be beneficial to finish some of the work in the wage and compensation task force. It was an excellent meeting. He certainly has a lot to offer, and we felt that the type of technical work he'll do is better suited later on in the budget process. So we do not have a proposal tonight to vote on. We would prefer that it just be referred back to committee, and at the proper time when we have a true scope of service, we would bring it back.
Okay. In lieu of that, Mr. O'Malley, do you withdraw your second?
Yes.
Ms. Gieske, would you withdraw that motion?
Yes.
Super. So we have no motion.
No motion. I'm finished.
That was quick. Next up, roads. Mr. Stark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 11.1, motion to approve ordinance 18-10, lowering the posted speed limit on Kelly Road to 45 mile an hour between Caledonia and Beloit Road.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Stark, second by Mr. Ellingson. Discussion. Mr. Newhouse.
All the studies say we have to?
Mr. Crowan be the voice of reason on that. They did conduct a speed study, and the speed study led him to this conclusion. So I don't believe Mr. Crowan would bring anything before the board that wasn't warranted.
Mr. Crone, do you wish to come up and discuss?
I concur. The speed study does support lowering it to 45. Currently, it's a suggested 45. It's a unposted 55 enforceable.
Mr. Newhouse.
When we had the discussion on the stop sign at Lawrenceville and Poplar Grove, I asked the same question. Your comment was it was getting into the range of where it looked to be necessary, but it wasn't absolutely necessary, but we voted for it anyway. This comment is that it's, I think you used the word suggested 45. Is that the word you used?
The current non-enforceable sign that's up suggests 45 miles per hour. The township put that up. That is not legally binding or enforceable. So it's just a sign that's out there. The enforceable speed limit out there is an unposted 55. So 55 miles per hour is the current speed limit.
I would like to say my goal is always to move transportation quickly and also safely. Were the accidents compiling on this road something that promoted this study, or was this neighbors saying we'd like people to slow down, or how did we get started?
This was pushed by the township, and the township and the residents have asked us to move forward with the speed study. The road is currently 17 foot wide. The ADT, the average daily traffic on the road, is about 450 vehicles per day. I think there's a lot of traffic that uses this as a shortcut from Candlewick over to Argyle, either going up north or going south towards the west. So there's concern with the 17 mile per hour width, or 17 foot width, safety concerns. The township is looking at both widening the road and reducing the speed limit, and so I'm going forward with the request of lowering the speed limit, and I did the speed study, and the speed study does support 45 miles per hour. They are additionally looking at increasing the width for that ADT, the 450 vehicles per day. The standard width would be a 20-foot roadway width. So they're currently looking at trying to upgrade that roadway width to make a safer road. So,
Ms. Ward?
I have talked to several people that live on that particular road, and at the time when it was, a higher speed limit, it wasn't used that much. It was kind of a quiet country road, but then when Candlewick started to grow rapidly, it became like a thoroughfare. And while some of the residents tell me they don't want it improved or they don't want it widened, they do want the speed limit reduced because they do think there is too much heavy traffic on that going too fast.
Further discussion? Mr. Cohn, if they widen that road, would that negate the necessity to lower the speed limit?
nope, it would not. In fact, actually, I suggested that we do a speed study before and after, but they're independent. Speed study is based on an 85 percentile speed or the number of entrances on those roads. The width is strictly based on volume, and the volume dictates the width per IDOT policy.
Okay, any further discussion? Mr. Stark, did you have something? Oh, I thought you were waving your hand.
I do.
So. Go ahead.
At the end of the day, this is a public road. Motor fuel tax is collected from it, I assume, Mr. Crone, given to that township. So anybody that's a resident of that township can use that road as often as they want, as long as within legal parameters. And if we're going to sit here and bellyache that Candlewick has added more traffic to it, I would make the argument that probably less people live in Candlewick now than 10 years ago, judging by the amount of foreclosures that have been in there and lots that have gone to property tax sales because people aren't paying the tax on it. So merely just to keep people off of my road is a ridiculous reason not to provide safe transportation in our county.
Yes.
Okay. Anything further? Let's do a roll call on this, just to be sure.
Jeff Carlisle?
Yes.
Denny Ellingson?
Yes.
Sherry Gieske?
Yes.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Milner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse.
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Brad Stark,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Carl Johnson,
Yes.
Sherry Branson,
Yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Stark.
11.2, motion to approve Resolution 18-14, appropriating $700,000 of MFT funds as matching funds for the TARP grant funding for Manchester Road upgrade to the Winnebago County line to state line at Saltbox Road.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Stark, seconded by Ms. Branson. Discussion. Mr. Stark.
I just want to say this was all Mr. Crone going for a grant that on paper we probably should have never got, and this is a huge benefit to our county road system. He's working toward a goal that I had when I got elected of upgrading our county highway system to rival that of the state's, and I would say in a lot of parts of our county, I think our county roads are better. So I thank Mr. Crone for doing the legwork and getting this grant so we can continue improving our system.
Well said, Mr. Stark. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Gieske,
Yes.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Milner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Brad Stark,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Carl Johnson,
Yes.
Sherry Branson,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle.
Yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Stark, anything further?
That is all we have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Carlisle, I see you have no motions. Anything you'd like to share with us?
We have no motions, no sharing, thank you.
Maybe a solo or anything?
No,
Okay.
no song and dance tonight.
All right. Admin, Mr. Newhouse.
I think admin's going to ruin your run here, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve proclamation Comcast Cares Day.
Motion by Mr. Newhouse, seconded by
Second.
Ms. Branson. Discussion. No discussion?
Okay.
Simple. All in favor? No, Mr. Newhouse?
I am in favor of anything that gets our youth off the couch, away from the TV, bribe them with a T-shirt, and we end up with a lot of improvement in a lot of our public grounds. I applaud what Comcast has done, and I will be voting in favor of this.
Anyone else? Mr. Stark?
I agree with Mr. Newhouse to a point. I made my feelings on this very clear at admin. I don't think it's our place to help a nationwide, worldwide company with free publicity. If they really cared, it'd just be We Care Day, not Comcast Cares Today. It was to the point where the person that was here pushing the issue, I mean, she took time to call me and I listened to the same 10-minute spiel she gave the committee on it. People that want to do good things are going to go do good things with or without Comcast and with and without our blessing. I don't feel as though it is our job as a governing taxing body to prop up a private entity for what they want to do as good work. I've watched Dean Foods here in town do marvelous good things throughout the community with BYB and our Heritage Days, and we're not down here giving them a proclamation. And there's multiple other companies and organizations in this county that go unnamed because they're just out to do good work for the sake of doing good work. So unless we're going to get in the habit of every month wasting 10, 15, 20 minutes at committee and then back here saluting all of them, this to me is a moot point. To me, I'm a no vote. I was last year, and I always will be as long as this keeps coming on.
Thank you, Mr. Stark. Anything further? Mr. Newhouse.
I also appreciate the increased funding that they're putting into the community as part of this day also. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newhouse. Anything further? I would say that I appreciate Mr. Stark's position. However, I kind of look at this that there's really nothing bad that can come out of this, and declaring this, we get good things, like Mr. Newhouse said. We're getting kids outside. We're getting people out, encouraging them to volunteer by giving them a lunch, giving them a T-shirt. And, oh, by the way, yes, our County Parks and Conservation Foundation gets money on top of it. So I think it's a small price to pay to say, okay, we'll make a declaration as Comcast Cares Day in order to help many individuals be outside and help take part in the community, help clean up the community, and also help financially. So I am absolutely a yes vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
I believe motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve Resolution 18-13, acceptance of the special warranty, Section 5311, Transportation Program.
Motion by Mr. Newhouse. Is there a second?
Second.
By Ms. Gieske. Mr. Newhouse, you want to clarify for us exactly what this is?
This is the first of a couple of votes that we do annually for the 5311 grant. This one in particular deals with employee protection provisions.
Thank you, sir. Any discussion, questions?
And if I said that wrong, I'll yield to Mr. Terranoni.
He's not waving or shaking his head, so you seem to be okay. All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Wait. I'm sorry. Do we need to, this is a contract? Roll call. Okay. Roll call, please.
Sherry Gieske,
Yes.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Muehlner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Brad Stark,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Carl Johnson,
Yes.
Sherry Branson,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the purchase of service agreement for non-metro public transportation under Section 5311, operation and downstate operation assistance programs.
Motion by Mr. Newhouse. Is there a second? By Mr. Ellingson. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Muehlner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Brad Stark,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Carl Johnson,
Yes.
Sherry Branson,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle, Sherry Gieske,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Last but not least.
sorry,
After careful consideration.
making sure you're paying attention.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the intergovernmental agreement between Illinois Department of Transportation, MPO, transit provider, contingent upon a final review by the state's attorney and county administrator.
Motion by Mr. Newhouse. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Carl Larson. Discussion? Mr. Newhouse.
This is a brand-new item, consists of performance measures as developed by IDOT.
Okay. Mr. Ellingson.
Has this been reviewed by both the state's attorney and county administrator at this time then?
Well, I've looked it over and I've talked to RMAP. I wouldn't want to speak for state's attorney if she's at time.
We're just still in the process of reviewing it at this point. But we do have the document.
Okay. So this approval will be contingent upon their approval at a later date. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Muehlner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Brad Stark,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Carl Johnson,
Yes.
Sherry Branson,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Gieske,
Yes.
Carl Larson.
Yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Newhouse.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve ordinance 18-11, establishing fees charged for services at the county clerk's office.
Motion by Mr. Newhouse. Is there a second? By Ms. Gieske. Discussion. Mr. Newhouse.
This originally came about as a statutory requirement for the county recorder office. I believe the decision was made to pursue this effort at the clerk's office at the same time. We began the discussion for this at finance during the budget process last year, and the results have come before the admin committee and now the county board.
Okay, further discussion. Ms. Ward, you had a question?
I do. First, I want to thank Julie. I mean, she's doing a tremendous job in her department. I know it's not easy. However, whenever I hear department heads or county board members say, we're charging less than some other neighboring counties for inspections or death certificates or birth certificates, I say, good for us. I don't say, let's get every penny we can. And I know we need the money, folks, but all of this has a direct impact on either the people we serve or the companies that are serving our people. So as I did last month with the health department fees, I will vote no on fee increases.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. Anyone else? Ms. Miller?
It's my understanding that the study that was done that supported these changes in the fees was merely to ensure that we are not subsidizing these documents. The fees being raised were it's just a cost study. It's what it costs to process that paper, and the fee was changed to accommodate what it costs us to process the paper. We're not using this as a revenue stream. We're making sure that we don't subsidize the processing of documents. Is that correct?
Ms. Stapler, I'll yield to you.
Actually, that is correct. When we did this study, we took a look at recording fees and clerk fees, and what you see before you, what you're voting on, is all of those recommended fees cover what it costs us right at what it costs. You should have received something on board docs that would tell you exactly what our costs are per item that you see that you're voting on, and you'd be able to see that the cost is far exceeds what we're charging now. This was not based on what other counties charge. This was based on actually what our cost is.
Thank you.
Ms. Gieske?
The truth of the matter is, if you leave the fees where they are now, then all the citizens in this county are subsidizing this. As Jessica has pointed out, it is just the reverse. These are user fees. The only people that are going to pay this are going to use one of these. If we don't cover our costs, then what we are doing is the rest of the citizens are supplementing that.
Any further discussion? Mr. Ellingson?
Yeah, the only problem I have with this ordinance is that it still has a couple of places in it that are lower. The fees will be lower than what our actual cost is. And I don't think we should be doing it. I think it's a bad precedent. I think in several cases, as soon as you get another year down the road, some of these that are close are going to be less than our cost, and we're going to be going backwards again already. And I guess I'd like to make sure that they all will be at least covering what it costs us to do these operations.
Thank you.
Actually, if I could respond to that, we did take a look at those when Ken and I did the ordinance, and we did round those up.
Oh, so they are all above. Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Branson?
Nobody wants to raise fees, but I think it's important that we cover our costs just so that we break even at the end of the day. And I want to point out that these fees, several of them have not been increased in, what did you say, like 20 years?
Oh, at least, yes, yeah. I did some research, and I talked with former county clerks Mary Stewart and Pam McAuliffe, and neither of them could recall having any kind of change in their fees.
If these fees had been adjusted like every, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, it wouldn't be such a big bite for a change at this point. But right now we're in a spot where we really need to play catch up, and as much as I don't want to raise the fees, it needs to be done.
Any further discussion? Mr. Larson?
The registered voter file maintenance is currently nothing, and it's going to be 3 cents per voter. How is that paid for? It's not paid for by the voters, is it, themselves?
Go ahead, Ms. Stapler.
Yes, that's actually something, he took a look at just to see what our cost is. That is our cost. That is not something that is a cost. It's not a user fee. That is something that the general fund does cover.
So this is really, shouldn't even be on here, maybe?
I guess, Mr. Larson, if I could ask that, I'm not seeing Fee, are you looking at the ordinance?
Yes.
Oh, I see it. Oh.
Recommended fee.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, there we go.
I actually thought that was the cost per voter that you give them on the list, isn't it? If they want a list of so many.
Oh, if they want a list of voters, is that what that is?
No, that is what our cost is for every single voter, what it costs us to maintain their file. The one above it, the registered voter list, that is if they were to request a voter list.
So no one pays that fee?
Correct.
For 3 cents?
Right.
Did you, Mr. Larson, are you just as confused as I am, or did you get your answer?
Excuse me again?
Are you just as confused as I am, or did you get your question answered?
Well, then now I'm just wondering whether it should be on there. Who's going to, if nobody is going to pay this fee, why are we voting on a recommended fee for it?
Ken, would you move that heading down again?
Any
Take it the other way.
The other way.
Do you know?
Okay.
Okay, so this is a,
Okay.
if we can just so we make sure, we're talking the registered voter file maintenance. The recommended fee is $3 per registered voter. 3 cents, what did I say, $3? Sorry. 3 cents. My apologies. But no one pays that fee. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Ms. Kieske?
Am I understanding you, Julie and Ken, that's just what it costs you to maintain those? So if you've got 5,000 voters on that list, you multiply 5,000 times 3 cents.
Correct.
So it's not a recommended fee, it's just your cost.
That is, yep.
Mr. Ellingson?
When I hear that, it seems to me that Mr. Larson's right, and I would think we would not show that as a fee. I mean, I thought the one thing we saw, we actually had a current fee charged, a current cost, and then a recommended fee. And that would be in the actual cost column, but as a recommended fee, I would think that would show nothing at this point.
So does that mean someone would like to amend that? Mr. Newhouse?
Just so I think I'm understanding what everyone's saying. If I look at the marriage and civil union license, current charge $20, our recommended fee is $30. If we vote in the affirmative, our fee is going to go to $30. Is that correct? That's right.
Correct.
So if we vote in the affirmative, that recommended fee for a registered voter file, if I use the same rationale as marriage and civil union, we're going to be charging everybody 3 cents. So I would probably move to amend to strike that.
So we have an amendment by Mr. Newhouse to
Second.
strike the registered voter file maintenance fee from this document, and seconded by Mr. Larson, Ray Larson. Any discussion? All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay?
We got to go back to the main motion.
So now we have the main motion. Any further discussion on the main motion? Roll call, please.
Jessica Mueller,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Brad Stark,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
No.
Carl Johnson,
Yes.
Sherry Branson,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Gieske,
Yes.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson.
Aye.
Motion carries. Mr. Newhouse.
Mr. Chairman, for item 13.6, ordinance 1812 needs to be open to the public for 2 weeks before we can vote on it. It did not make that deadline, so I would move to table ordinance 1812, establishing fees charged for services in the county recorder's office to the May County Board meeting.
Second.
Uh-oh. Do we want to table? Is that proper? Yeah.
You want to go back to
Yeah,
committee?
if we refer it back to committee.
Okay.
He actually tabled that to a date. Does that make any difference?
Mr.
Okay. Did I get a second, or am I still hanging there?
I ignored the second. Somebody
Okay.
was waving and hollering. I wanted to
Mr.
clear-
Chairman, I would move this goes back to committee for further consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Newhouse. Is there a second for that, or? Someone second that motion to send it back to committee?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Branson. So, motion by Mr. Newhouse, second by Ms. Branson to move that. Mr. Giannone?
Just to clarify, this requires an actual layover. That's why.
Right, well, because the statute wasn't followed, it has to be posted at the clerk's office in the form that it is for 2 weeks prior to us voting on it. We just discovered that this morning, so that's why it needs to come back next month, is because we did not follow the statute properly. So if you voted on it tonight, it would not, we wouldn't have followed the statute, so.
Just out of curiosity, if we push it back to committee and it gets voted on in committee again to come here, will it make the 2 weeks then?
Yes, because as long as it's posted, it doesn't have to pass that committee. As long as it's posted in the clerk's office 2 weeks prior to the county board meeting, the meeting that's going to pass to be effective.
Okay.
it's appropriate.
Correct, right.
Okay. Mr. Newhouse?
So it is posted today?
It will be posted tomorrow as the ordinance is,
Okay.
yes, correct. It can't be more than 4 weeks.
Okay, Mr. Ellingson.
I guess it just seems to me that it probably would be logical that the board approve it for posting. That way you've got a date, to it, and if it sets for a month and comes back to the next meeting, you've covered both bases and it's in the records. If we send it back to committee, you're still going to have to bring it back up at committee to bring it back forward, aren't you, since we put it back to be handled again?
I guess it doesn't have to be voted on by the board to be posted. That's not required by the statute. I just think for purposes of, instead of tabling it, then that causes some issues. But I think just sending it back to committee, it shouldn't be an issue, I would think, because it was fully discussed last time, and then just bring it back up again in May.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to send it back to committee. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right.
Mr. Newhouse.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the hiring guidelines for the ad hoc committee.
Motion by Mr. Newhouse. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Carlisle. Discussion. Mrs. Geeske.
I'd like to ask that we amend this motion to the newest edition dated today.
Second.
Okay, could you, Ms. Geeske, could you read what that
Yes.
is so that we,
It's just a couple of extra words. In the first bullet, we added county board chairman. He had his bottom lip out and wanted to be part of the party. Oh, did I say that? In the second bullet, we added the words ad hoc committee, and the committee responsible for oversight of the position will conduct final interviews. We added the words ad hoc committee. And one of the beauties of working together on this, as we're going through the process of hiring an assessor, is we got a chance to road test this and realized that we needed a couple of extra words in there. Otherwise, we'd have the potential for interviewing people 3 times. And that timeline stretches out too much. So these are just a couple of little extra words.
discussion? Oh, wait a minute, we had an amendment by Ms. Geeske. Who read it? It was seconded by Mr. Stark. Okay. Discussion on the amendments. Okay, all in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Discussion on the original motion as amended. Mr. Newhouse.
As we had the opportunity to peruse through what other counties did and have done for decades, I think we have come upon something simple, and we have come upon something that gives us at least a basic framework without tying us down too far. So after, I think, 5 months at committee, it's ready for a vote.
Mr. Ellingson.
I'm glad it's ready for a vote, but you've confused me now with our last addition we put on it. Because number 2 says that the ad hoc committee and the committee responsible for the oversight of the position will conduct final interviews, but the responsible committee will forward their selection to the county board. So now you're going to take, and when it makes its final way, you're going to drop it from one group working on it to part of that group recommending it? Is that what we really want to do?
Mr. Newhouse?
Again, this is basic language, but if I'm looking at the second one, the ad hoc committee and the committee responsible for oversight, that could be the admin committee or the finance committee, they all of a sudden together become the responsible committee.
So you're saying in number 3 that is still the 2 groups together will bring it forward?
I'm one of 5 voices on that committee that was looking at it, but that's the way I view it.
Okay. I'm just not sure that I read it the same way, and that's what bothers me with a lot of rules, is they're also open to interpretation. And I'd rather you said that the committee in point 2 would forward the selection to the county board for approval.
Would you feel more comfortable, Mr. Ellingson, if we changed bullet point number 3 to read something similar to the ad hoc committee and the oversight committee will forward their selection to the county board?
I think that would be clear.
Is that an amendment you'd like to make?
I would move to make that.
Okay, so we have an amendment by Mr. Ellingson for bullet point number 3. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Branson. Discussion? Mr. O'Malley?
You're going to have so many people involved, it's hard enough to get these groups together. When you get over 5 on these extra committees, it's hard for these groups to come together. I think you're getting, the responsible committee is the one that would vote on it, traditionally. You get so many people involved, it's going to be hard just to call the party.
Okay. Mr. Newhouse?
I take that point very well, Bernie. You have hit on a discussion item that we've all had, and that it does take time. So the ad hoc committee will have the sum total of all the resumes. That ad hoc committee will run through them, whittle it down. They will take the interview process and whittle that down to either 1 or 2 final candidates, and those 1 or 2 final candidates will be the final step where the oversight committee becomes involved. So they're getting all those people in all those processes will be indeed cumbersome. So we just left that towards the end so that they'd have an opportunity on that final vote.
Mr. Ellingson?
I guess we just made me think it needs to go back to committee, because I just heard 2 different things. When I asked the question, I was told, well, the 2 groups together would make the final selection and bring it to the board. And as Mr. O'Malley just said, it appears to me he thinks that becomes cumbersome, and I'm not so sure. I questioned that when I brought it up, but I guess now I'm hearing it said both ways. Again, that it's better one group does it, and it's better that the 2 groups together do it. So I guess I just want to make sure that there's a little bit of time and thought in this before we make a quick reaction and then wish we hadn't done it that way.
I think one of the things we have to remember is this isn't something we do 2 or 3 times a month. Right. And hopefully we've got many people in place that are going to be here for a very, very, very long time. And we won't have to do this in my tenure or maybe even any of our tenure again. That being said, I really think that idea of gathering everybody together is, well, it's a point. I just don't know how solid of a point it is, because it happens so infrequently. It's not much different than trying to get 2 committees together for budget processing. You're only talking about 1 or 2 meetings every couple of years. if that. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think the intent was, with this guideline, is that the ad hoc committee would narrow the focus down to the candidates for second interviews. The ad hoc committee, together with the oversight committee, would then do final interviews and make a recommendation to the board from there. I think that's the intent of this document, and would help streamline the whole process and hopefully make it a whole lot more professional. Mr. O'Malley?
On the last assessor we interviewed, he was interviewed by such a large group of people, it was intimidating. A lot of people didn't make first and second interviews. It was very clumsy. When you get a large committee and you don't get everyone there together, it does not look good. It really hurt us in the last set we did. I again tell you that the larger mass you have interviewing, you're talking 7, 8 people in the interview process. I mean, that's an inquisition to some people. I really think this through. I would almost go back and send this back somewhere and let people think about it.
Mr. Carlisle?
Committee has done a yeoman's job of trying to verbalize the simple solution to pulling in people that we don't do often enough. This is a minor guideline. It's not a statute. It's a guideline for us to pull these things together. I think we are making this thing much harder than it is. And when you're at these committee meetings, and if you did come to these committee meetings, these things would have been vetted then. And I wish they were vetted then and not at this. That's what our committee meetings are supposed to do. What I'd like to do now is vote on this.
Okay. Any further discussion? Mr. Ellingson?
I just have to make one comment on that. I agree with you. I think it'd be great if it was all vetted and taken care of in those places, but as soon as it was read tonight, we're adding words and changes that we've got to make sure we understand again. So maybe it wasn't quite done properly before it came here, but I agree it's been worked on long and hard, and I know a couple times we've said, let's forget it. But I think if we're going to do it and have it there for a time, you want to make sure you've got it understood so that people can look at it, and 12 of us can basically agree in 2 months with what's said in it.
Okay. Further discussion? Mr. Allen, or Mr. Newhouse?
I hate to do this, but I want to hit on Bernie's point one last time. Bernie, if you don't like the addition of ad hoc committee and you want to allow the responsibility to stay with those people in the first bullet point, then you'll vote down the amendment, I assume. And then we will vote on it as it came out of committee without the addition of all the people and the extra meetings in the second bullet point. Is that what I understand your concern is?
I just think it's too many people in these final interviews. I think it's a very intimidating group of people. We have 8 people there.
So, Mr. Chairman, are we now voting on the amendment or the motion as it has already been amended?
I've just been informed that we did not vote on the amendment, the second amendment.
Yep.
I thought we had, but we did not. So let's vote on the second amendment. That second amendment would be rewording bullet point 3 to read the ad hoc committee and oversight committee will forward their selection to the county board for approval. Any further discussion on the amendment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Roll call, please, on the amendment.
Marshall Newhouse,
No.
Bernard O'Malley,
No.
Brad Stark,
No.
Kathy Ward,
No.
Carl Johnson,
Yes.
Sherry Branson,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle,
Nope.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Gieske,
No.
Carl Larson,
No.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Milner.
No.
Motion fails. So the guideline that we will vote on will stay as simply the responsible committee will forward their selection to the county board for approval. Ms. Ward?
Yes, I just have one question. During this whole process, there's some of the board that are going to be very involved in this and some of us that apparently are not. What kind of input will we have other than just voting on whoever they choose? Will we be allowed to sit in on an interview, or will we be allowed to see the resumes, or how are the rest of us going to interact? I mean, these are big decisions, right, folks? Seems to me.
Mr. Newhouse?
Before I answer the question, the next vote we're having is the vote on this as it is read up on the screen now. Is that correct?
Yes. Correct.
So as it is read up on the screen, there will be 4 people looking at the resumes. There will be, let's see, chairman, chair. Hold a second. Is that 4 or 5? I can't count straight.
For the first time.
For the first time, okay.
5
Then the
second.
addition in the second bullet point will be the ad hoc committee, so that will be.
It'll actually just
There's
be for the
5.
first time.
For the first time.
Board members, one's an administrator there, right?
Right.
That's right.
So it's the chairman, chair of finance, no, it's actually 3.
It's county chairman, the chairman of finance, chairman of admin,
Yep.
the chairman of the oversight committee, that's 4, and the county administrator.
No?
What do you mean no?
Okay.
Yeah, county board chairman, chair of finance, chair of admin, county administrator, plus the chair of the oversight committee.
That's 4.
So there's 4 board members, unless one of those is the same person. I mean, then
Right.
obviously it would be 3 board members plus the county administrator.
As it moves down to the second bullet point, the committee responsible for oversight will be included in that round. So that will probably be another 4 or 5 people from the board. And the remainder of the board will be voting at the board vote. So it's very possible that not every board member will participate in the interview. By the time the second bullet point comes along as it's read, very possibly half of the board, if not more, will be voting at that point.
I guess it would be my, we need to get clarification from the state's attorney for sure, but if there's a county board member, just my opinion, that wants to come and witness, I guess, the interviews, at least at the second point, between the ad hoc committee and the committee responsible for oversight, I don't necessarily see a problem with that, but they would not necessarily be involved in the interview, so to speak. They would be there to take notes, witness, or whatever.
Okay.
That would be my take on it, but that's not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily have to be the policy of the board, because I don't know what the actual legal ramifications or abilities are of the board if the board chooses to, because it will all be an executive session, so I don't know if all board members are automatically allowed into executive session, or if they have to be invited in if they're not on that particular committee, and that's something the state's attorney has to look at for us to see. Mr. Ellingson?
I think along those lines, it's really no different than any of our committees as we're set up today. People can come to meetings,
right.
people can listen, people can ask questions, but unless you're going to have a committee of the whole to do all these things, which we've already talked about how cumbersome it is to get around all this, that I would hate to see us try and do that, but it's going to take the same path and look the same way as other things happen.
Mr. Carl Larson?
This board.
So in lieu of the conversation we've had so far, it seems that two changes will address these issues that have been brought up. From the second bullet point, removing the ad hoc committee portion of it, so then it is only referring to the committee responsible, and that would allow the second and third bullet points to be combined, so that the second bullet point would read, the committee responsible for oversight will conduct the final interview and then forward their selection to the county board for approval. So those two changes would allow the second and third bullet points to be combined and would prevent Mr. O'Malley's concern of there being 8 people at that second stage versus just the committee. And that would allow any other board member to visit that committee then while they're having they're conducting that interview portion.
The only concern I would have with doing that change is that you have the ad hoc committee that has narrowed down the list of candidates and conducted first interviews. So I think it's extremely beneficial to have those individuals who have narrowed that focus down to certain individuals to be involved in those second interviews also. A, for familiarity with the candidates, and B, so that they can give the responsible committee some idea as to why they chose these individuals for second interviews. I think that's an important aspect of the whole process to help show continuity and professionalism in the whole thing. Ms. Branson.
Yeah, this board has a long-standing understanding, I guess. I don't know what the right word for it is, but when we go to any committee meeting or any public meeting or anything like that, as a board member, we have an understanding that we have a right to speak at those meetings, and if we have any questions or concerns, we are always granted to me, it's respect. We are allowed to speak and voice our opinions. For you to say that if a board member wants to go to one of these interviews and they're not allowed to speak or to ask a question, I think that sets a bad precedence. That just rubs me as very wrong.
Ms. Kieske.
I guess I have an observation here. When you are, when you run an ad to hire somebody, and they come in and we interview them, guess what? They are also interviewing us.
Sure.
And frankly, for us to keep looking at ourselves, what is it we want? What is it we want to be able to do? We want to have hordes of people in there, whatever you want to think about it. I think we're thinking about the wrong people here. I think we should be thinking about the people that we're trying to hire. Let's be clear. They're looking at us too. And if we can't even make something, if we can't even say to ourselves, we're going to do this in the very best way we can, so they like us. So they want to come and work for us, you know, and this is what, Marshall, 5 months? We've been at this for 5 months. I'm terrified if we ever get a really tough issue in front of us. You know, I think it's time to toss this out and just go back and do it willy-nilly like we've been doing it, and we'll just fuss through it, and if we look unprofessional and we lose candidates, we can lose candidates. We're just overthinking the daylights out of this, I think.
Mr. Stark.
I've been a proponent of this since its inception, basically. And what we ended up here with is a guideline on one sheet of paper, which I love. Everybody here knows I love simplicity. The issues I see being brought up tonight are kind of only limited to one's imagination. It just, to me, it's nice and simple, it's clean cut. When we get to hiring this person, hopefully we don't have to use this thing for 10 years more. I can only hope that we don't have to use it. On the other hand, like Ms. Giese said, we're being interviewed while we're interviewing someone else. And to expect someone to come into a room and get questions lobbed at them by 12 people is unrealistic of us hiring the right candidate. We need to have a professional setting where I just read this and assume that
when it goes to the committee for oversight, that the chairman of that committee is then going to conduct the interview with the committee. Committee members, while granted by that committee chair, will ask their questions. I would hope that board members that are not members of the committee would have the decorum about themselves to submit any questions that they would want forwarded to the interviewee, to the committee chair, so they could ask those questions and conduct a nice, professional interview. 12 people lobbing questions, and/or the possibility of a rogue board member, could be any one of us, hijacking that interview process is going to be detrimental to what we're trying to do. 5 months of work, we got a nice, clean-cut, simple document. Let's move forward on it. And if you don't want to move forward, if you want to dice it up, just go with what Ms. Giese said and throw it in the trash can.
I think one thing to point out is this document, this guideline isn't just for this board. In fact, my intention would be that this is more for boards, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 boards down the road, so that they have a guideline, so that they don't have some people who want to say, well, I just want to hire that person. Whether it's a new county administrator who says, well, I've got the power, I can just hire that person, or a county chairman, or whoever that just says, this is who we're hiring, that's what we're going to do. So that it does create that professional aspect. These people are involved, this is how we're going to go through it, and everybody knows that process. That's what this is for, that's what its intent is, and I think Ms. Gieske's right, we're trying to pick at it and look at it in too many different ways. Mr. Ellingson.
I've got 2 things. The second one's a question, but the first one, I agree. As we've interviewed people in the past, it's better if you have it set up. So you may have a committee of 4 people there and an administrator, if you want it to be that way, that each person on that group asks the same question to each of the candidates, so that it's all done equally and fairly and with accenting of the questions on the same syllables and parts of it, so that the same process is seen for all of them. And that makes it hard to do and yet that everybody's going to be able to ask questions. I agree. You need to get it into that group, and when they ask the questions come the same to each of them. My second question, my first question, second thought, what is the amendment we're voting on now, that we're discussing now? I'd like to see.
We're discussing the
main motion?
The amended motion, yeah, the motion as amended, which appears before you on the screen.
We don't have
right
an
now.
amended motion, do we?
Yeah, it's this one right here. This is the amended motion right here.
Right there.
That's on the screen. The amendments were
No, we didn't.
ad hoc committee is added to bullet point 2.
Okay.
And
County board chairman.
County board chairman added to the hiring committee made up, and changed at interview. We added parentheses around the S, just in case you get one candidate that is just so far superior to all the others, or maybe the others are all that bad that you only had one candidate worth a second interview. Ms. Ward.
The way you have outlined it also holds true. Like any executive meeting, any county board member, any meeting, any county under the Open Meetings Act of Illinois can attend.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor of the amended motion, say aye.
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 Opposed?
No?
No.
Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Newhouse, anything further?
Admin has completed its motions.
You're going to yield the
with
floor?
speed and
Wait a minute.
oh, never mind.
Point of order. I
Mr.
still think
Ellingson.
with what you're telling me, we just voted on an amendment.
No, we voted on the amended motion.
When
Or
was
the
that-
motion,
when
the
was
motion,
that amendment
the
voted on
motion,
then?
the motion was amended. We have voted on the amendment from Ms. Gieske's motion. We voted on Ms. Gieske's amendment to the motion right away.
Right away? Did we?
Yes.
Okay. Very good.
Anything further?
Exactly.
City County, Ms. Ward.
Yes, thank you. I would move to approve the lease with Terra Navigator as an attachment to the lease option agreement for development of a solar energy renewable project at landfill number 2, contingent about final review by the county board chairman, our state's attorney, and our county administrator.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Ward, seconded by Mr. Carlisle. Discussion. Mr. Terranoni.
I'd like to just point out a couple clarification items just in case none of this was clear in the presentations. Regarding the lease payments, I put an email on everyone's desk just to clarify how that happens and how they escalate up to possibly in this $22,000 range, and it's based on megawatts of the project. So the developers are going to shoot for the largest megawattage type project they can get. And that's how you achieve this $21,000 possible build out. And also, in addition to that, there's a benefit of the electricity side that the county would get to take a value in dollars in addition to the lease against power bills for the county buildings. I don't have a real firm number of what that is. I am of the belief that something probably comparable to the lease revenue is where that would finally end up. The other item is in your executive portion of your board docs is the marked up most current lease, because it's going through a lot of changes with legal counsel. So that it's in executive because we have a lot of attorney-client comments that go along with it. That's why it's in the executive category.
It is not in board docs under executive.
Yes.
I'm looking at it, and it has nothing listed.
He means the off-limits side of it, the board docs, not the public side.
Ah, gotcha.
Yep, yep, yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
So, Ms. Branson?
Yeah, this is a project that we've been working on in City County for a very long time, and I would really like to see this go through. However, as of last night, the amended agreement was not available, and it's still not finalized. And this is a project that we're looking at about a 20-year commitment. And I think because of the length of it and the fact that we don't have the finalized details worked out for us to even review, I would move that we postpone this until next month so that we have time to work out those issues and actually read the contract so we know what we're getting into. I don't think that it's appropriate to require or have all the blame should something go wrong fall on just 3 people. I think as elected officials, we should all be accountable for it.
Mr. Terranoni, how will that affect the ability of Terra Navigator to actually get a project going?
Okay. Unfortunately, I have to give a complicated answer. You did approve the lease option. That was the first step. So Terra Navigator can take that document and begin the process of doing their interconnect study. And in the lease option, I believe we had a 60-day review period in which the parties come together and agree on a lease. So they'll have to make a decision. Should they start the interconnect process now when the lease isn't final, or do they just decide to wait? So there is no clear answer, but I've always felt that you should vote on things when you're comfortable with it. And this is very complex. We didn't have that draft until yesterday. That's just how much time it's taken.
I know you've been working very hard on it for a long time.
The longer it's delayed, the less chance there is of a project. Would that be a fair statement?
Less chance of the favorable credit. In other words, if
the
you-
less favorable credit, the
less chance they could say, we want to do the project.
Okay. Ms.
I mean-
Geeske?
A quick, just because I don't quite get this, Ken, there's an option payment due date, and the amount of the option payment, $6,800 and 180 days after, and then anniversaries thereafter. There's that amount of money, and then we have the 3,000 per megawatt, which is almost 22,000 a year. How, can you just explain to me, so we get the 6,800 every year, plus we get the 21,750? Oh, okay.
You get the option money each year for up to 3 years, while they decide whether the project is even viable.
Okay.
And then they actually go out and build the project.
Got it.
And then in the middle of all that, they activate the lease. They say, okay, we're ready to do the lease. Okay. And then when the project is open for business and they're supplying the electricity, then you start getting your lease.
The 21, or the
Well,
per
you
megawatt.
get what the megawattage is.
Right.
Okay, we hope it's a lot, and they want it to be a lot. It's in everyone's interest that they get the most megawatts.
So it's an either or it's 3 years either or kind of situation. May I do one more, Chairman, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman? I understand what you're saying, Sherry. However, with all due respect, I think I'm not going to read this 82-page document. I'm not even going to understand all of it, but I have great faith in our state's attorney's office that she's going to cover our fannies. So I would suggest we move full speed ahead on this.
Mr. Ellingson?
I'm just confused in the fact that the lease rate seems so different, and what I'm seeing proposed in the rest of the leases on projects like this, it looks to be so much an acre a year, and on this now we're turning around and doing it on so many dollars, per megawatt. Is that going to bring these types of numbers into question when we do the rest of it, if we've got apples and oranges here working, as it appears to me we do?
I guess I'm trying to follow the question a little better. The way this company is approaching the lease, it's all based on megawatts. Now, the options based on the per acre. So it is a different model, that's true. But their view is we get the revenue off of how many megawatts. That's how you get your lease money. It's not based on per acre, because you could have a big acreage in a small number of megawatts, and you wouldn't want that. So that's what I understand how it works. And I think maybe what might have created a little confusion is when I tried to quote this with other companies, they would throw out, oh, we'll give you this amount, and if you did the math, it comes out to this per acre. Well, but that's not how they pay you. They pay you by megawatts.
Well, I guess I'm looking at the ones that are through the, to a landlord per property rental, which a lot of people in the county are already talking about the fact that you're going to do one thing for your county project, you're going to do a different one for, other people, and I think we've got to be careful to be pretty consistent, so it doesn't look like we've got a pet project and we're going to do something special on it, and we're going to do something different on the others. But that's where we're hearing numbers of $800 to $1,000 an acre, and where you're going to be taking and putting a tax rate on things that's going to be, if it's $1,000 an acre, okay, it's the acreage of the project. But now it appears in this case we're going to be doing it on megawatts instead of by acres, and you can be two very different numbers and two very different tax numbers, it seems to me, when you get done with it too. Because this is probably going to be, I don't know, probably a 18 to 20 acre project when they get done?
Estimate-wise, yes. In other words, it's a 34-acre landfill, but because these are panels that rest on a ballast on top of a flat surface, someone's got to figure out how much flat surface is really available.
Well, that was my question before, even on the ones that are rented from, farmers' grounds, how many acres, or how you figure out how many acres? Is it everything that's inside a fence? To me, it probably is, but that comes up with a lot different lease amount than what this appears to me to be. That's why I guess I'm just wondering if there's going to be a consistency issue in the community when we get done if we look at it this way.
Jessica.
I don't understand why we have to, excuse me, take into consideration the amount of the lease arrangement when we're thinking about how solar projects will unfold around the county, because it's actually none of our business what kind of lease arrangements a private landowner makes with a solar developer to lease their land. That's never been a consideration in our text amendment or our special use process. How the arrangements that private landowner makes with the company is their business. It's not our business. And so if the terms of our lease only come into question in the context of the other developments on private land, in the sense of how we treat the scope of the project, what setbacks we allow, that would be a consideration that would be cause for concern in consistency. But the terms of our lease should have nothing to do with it. And I think as long as we can justify what setbacks we offer this entity, then we have no problem with consistency. The terms of our lease are the terms of our lease, and that just as the terms of their lease are their business. That information isn't our concern, or am I wrong about that?
Ms. Ward?
My concern with this, and you make some good points, Jessica, my concern with this is somewhat what Ms. Giske was talking about. I don't want this one to get away. We've been working on this for a long, long time, and I want it to be right. I don't pretend to understand what I'm reading here either. I don't pretend to. But our state's attorney and Ken and the people who have a lot more knowledge than I do seem to be pretty close to saying, this looks like it'll work. So I think we've got to do it. I'm afraid that we're going to lose out on another good opportunity. It's been 8 months since we've been talking about doing this, something like that. And maybe they're obviously willing to be patient this long, but I think we need to start moving on some of these things, period.
Mr. Newhouse.
To Jessica's point, no, we are not involved in any of the contracts between the landowner and the developers.
It's not any of our business.
Mrs. Branson.
It is my understanding that for Terra Navigator to get their money from the government to go forward with this project, that what they need from us tonight is the lease option agreement, which our committee has read over and has approved, and is not the full-blown lease that they need tonight. I don't see any reason why we can't just approve the lease option, let them get started with what they need, and then take our time to go over the lease and work out the fine details and actually read it before we approve something that may very well bite us in the backside for the next 20 or 30 years.
The terms of the lease are 25, actually, because I did read it.
I did too.
Mr. Ellingson.
We've already done that agreement. We did that a month or two ago, it seems to me.
Yeah, the lease option agreement has already been passed this board and has already been signed by the chair and is off to them. So the lease option agreement is done. This is the next step in getting a contract done so that they can move forward. There's baby steps that they have to have, and they can't, finalize everything until all those baby steps are taken. The longer we delay, the less chance there really is that a project will happen. I guess I look at it a couple of ways. If we take a vote and we approve to do this this way, this wouldn't be the first time that this body has taken a contract-type situation and approved the basics of that the basic concepts of that contract, and then asked the county administrator and the state's attorney to be the final say that if yes, they feel this meets the the basic intent of the content that was discussed, and it protects the county in every which way possible, then yes, we can execute that contract and move forward in the interest of time and things of that nature. I look at this location we're looking at doing this as a landfill that has done nothing but bleed money from this county and from the city of Belvedere since I can't even remember when. And not just a little bit of dollars, a lot of dollars. At this point, if we could get a used set of golf clubs and a old rusty iron for anything out there, we'd be money ahead. I mean, to get anything, and the fact that somebody wants to actually pay us some money to put something there, to the point of the different type of lease, while not being an expert on these, I would assume that it has a lot to do with the type of pedestals that they have to utilize in a landfill type situation, because they can't drive posts in the ground, where in a normal farm field they can drive a post in the ground. They know I'm going to get X number of panels per square foot or per acre type of scenario, where here, well, if the slope doesn't fit it right, they can't dig down into this ground. If they can't set a pedestal there, they have to move somewhere else. So there's only so many they may get per acre over here and so many per acre over here. So I can understand the desire to pay it based on wattage produced versus acreage. So while it's a detailed thing, and yes, Ms. Branson, I think your points are certainly valid, but like Ms. Gieske and Ms. Ward, I have utmost faith in our state's attorney and her office to vet this contract and make sure we're not signing up for, having to pay them a bunch of money. And I have faith that the county administrator is certainly not going to try and steer us in any way. And I also have faith that if there's something that seems odd in that contract or deviates substantially from our basic knowledge of what we expect, they will bring it back to this body before they simply move forward with it. So I would say let's move forward. Ms. Milner.
I would also like to add that the most conservative estimate that we have available, of what a 7-megawatt facility would be assessed for under any of the scenarios that are an option at all. The most conservative estimate we have for an assessed value, that's the 1/3 of market, is around $400,000. Is what if it's assessed at a 7-megawatt facility assessed at $175,000 market value, the assessment would be around $400,000, which with the lowest tax rate in the county, around 9%, is going to generate a $36,000 tax bill every year. And we're the gatekeepers of that. We get 11% of that, but the school district, the township, the cemetery, our infrastructure are we are the gatekeepers of all these stakeholders, and they're all just waiting to be able to pay their bills, and we are going to help them.
I don't question that one bit, but
Ms. Branson, could you wait a moment? I got Mr. Ellingson first. Mr. Ellingson.
Thank you. I'm concerned that it still be fair, and I guess I mean fair to us as well as people worried about being fair in other places. But I just look at the dollars we're talking about, and as we talked before, when you talk the dollars you're going to generate, you're also talking about taxes on land, and it almost appears that this might be done differently. And as last I knew, they were talking about using a product that couldn't go into landfills from what they had told us before. Have we even talked about that? I'm just a little bit concerned about that. Didn't we learn that a couple of months ago, Mr. Newhouse?
Mr. Newhouse?
Those negotiations or that information probably will come forward at a later date. I don't think we're asking for that information in this lease agreement here.
Well, but I'm worried that we make a lease agreement on something lesser. If we have a lesser quality product when we get done on something that can't go to landfill, we're going to take a reduced amount on a per acre basis compared to what other people are going to be getting or paying. It just seemed to me it's not necessarily a good deal. And to me, we're making a kind of a final assessment when we do this tonight, that we are doing it, and here is the rate that we're going to let them do it at, and they can put up what they want.
Mr. Ellingson, could I ask you a question? just, I want to clarify what you said. That you're saying that they're proposing to utilize solar panels that cannot go onto the landfill?
No, I'm sorry. I'm saying they're talking about using solar panels that when they are no longer usable are not acceptable at landfill sites. Most of the others that we're talking about in the county from other companies can go to landfill sites and there's no hazardous material in them. This one, according to what we'd understood before, the scrap iron people in Belvedere said it would not be acceptable.
That would, to me, that would be something that would have to be covered in decommissioning part of the contract.
Well, it needs to be somewhere, and unless we've got, a whole thing, how do we agree on half the contract without having, those types of answers?
Mr. Carlisle.
Okay, I got to weigh in. The agreement that the state's attorney is looking at is all of what you've been talking about. You've got to give the state's attorney the opportunity to finish her job. Everything that you brought up, Denny, is absolutely what is in these agreements. And I read it. You got to look at it. If you didn't read it, you don't have a lot to say except opinions, and that's great, that's nice, but you got to read the data. You got to come up with some specific information for your points. I don't want to hear, I feel like, I think, just because. Those are not specific factors to this discussion. The discussion is the state's attorney is going to look, review, she's going to put an advertise to us saying this is a good contract, this is not a good contract, this is what we're going to change, this is how we're going to do it. I want her to do that job. That's what we're voting on. And it's important that we understand that. And I get a little emotional about this because I want it on the landfill. I brought it here. I want this. This is absolutely nuts that we're going on this. The company that's done this is substantially a high-quality company. We did the vetting on that. We understood where they came from. They don't do this on any willy-nilly type of landfill. They do it on landfills because they have the technology, they have the resources, they have the ability, and everything we brought forth to this stuff has been in documents, in information, and facts that we brought to this point. I would like to vote on this.
Mr. Stark.
Call the question.
A motion to call the question. Is there a second?
Second.
That was not a motion. He said he called the question.
I move to call the question.
Okay, that's different now.
Second.
Is there a second on that motion? Second by Mr. O'Malley. Motion by Mr. Stark to call a question. Second by Mr. O'Malley. All in favor to call a question, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. We have motion to approve the lease with Terra Navigator as an attachment to the lease option agreement for development of solar energy renewable project on landfill number 2, contingent upon final review by the county board chairman, state's attorney, and county administrator. Roll call, please.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Brad Stark,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Carl Johnson,
Yes.
Sherry Branson,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson,
No.
Sherry Gieske,
Yes.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Mueller,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Larson, public safety.
No motions from public safety.
You sure? Everybody else has talked for a while. Sure you want to get in on the fun?
I think my 3-cent comment made a big snowball for everybody else.
Oh, so we have you to blame for this. All right, next up, special committees, community building.
We meet tomorrow, Mr. Chairman. We are still looking for one member to complete our 11-member board at this point, and we're going to talk about that tomorrow night as well.
Super. UCCI, Mr. Terranoni.
No report.
Okay. Community Action,
No report,
Community
sir.
Action Agency, Ms.
No
Ward.
report, sir.
Okay. 911, Mr. Newhouse.
We paid the bills and we're out of there in 10 minutes.
Perfect. Any other committees? Scheduling of committees.
Finance.
Ms. Gieske.
Next finance meeting is Tuesday, May 8th at 6 PM right here.
Mr. Larson.
Next Public Safety Committee meeting is May 7th at 6 PM in this room.
Mr. Ellingson.
Give me that last one again first, please.
May 7th?
May, okay. Because I'm showing that the next PSB meeting will be in this boardroom on the 7th.
No, second.
No, not on the 2nd.
Not the 7th.
I said.
I know you did.
Oh.
You did. And I said PSB is on the 7th. Last I knew, Hillary would not be here on the 2nd, and I thought that meeting was moved to the 7th.
Ken?
My understanding is the PZB moved the May 2nd to May 10th. Does that sound right? And I was not present when that was decided.
I don't
so-
know.
Yes, I believe it was.
I think it's May 10th.
You think it's
Yeah.
May 10th?
You
Yeah.
think it's the 10th?
Yeah.
May
I think
10th.
Okay,
I think it's Thursday.
that's better.
PZB is Thursday, May 10th.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there a ZBA meeting coming up? So ZBA meeting the 24th of April at 7 o'clock in this room. Bring water, pizza, lawn chair. Mr. Newhouse.
I hate to say this, but I was looking at the county website, and we're on May 7th at 6 PM.
Great.
6:45.
I think we're at 6:45. May 7th, 6:45, this room.
The Google Calendar says 6 PM for admin on May 7th.
Yeah, I think we just
Right.
got moved.
It'll be changed.
Ms. Ward.
Yes, our city-county meeting will be on Wednesday, May 9th at 6 PM. We are going to have the interim director of the Belvedere Public Library coming. We have apparently a change there, so she will be here to talk to us.
Wonderful. Mr. Carlisle.
On the 3rd, Health and Human Services, 6 PM this building.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Stark.
Roads and capital improvement will be in this room, May 1st, 6.
Wonderful. Next up, any unfinished business, Ken?
No.
New business?
No.
Move to adjourn.
Do we need executive?
No.
You were on a roll. I was going to really get mad if you didn't hit that. Mr. Stark, did you have a
Move. Second. To adjourn. Second.
motion by Mr. Stark, second by Mr. Carlisle? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Those opposed should be quiet.
Yep.
Done for today. I don't know, how much did we get? Thank you for easy voting for that. Yes, we do. It says in there that the VC pays all taxes.
Last night I texted Ken about it on Monday.
VC pays all taxes. It's all in there. It's not a bad deal.
Sunday, Monday,
Did you grab a color copy of this? I want to photograph it. You didn't hold it or anything, did you? More entertaining board meetings? No, the board meeting would be more entertaining. I just want to take a picture of it. I don't necessarily.
Oh, I circled it.
Thanks. What are you thanking me for? Okay, well, I'm louder.
I circled
I
it.
want to convey the same thing.
Louder and meaner?
Sure. Of course.
I wasn't there, I couldn't make it.
I can't judge. I mean, I can, but I do it privately. The Lord says about that. We've been given explicit directions about the judgment thing.
The dump is still a dump. Did that change? It's still a dump.
Yes, and when it's in our head, it's a judgment yet, or is it still just an opinion at that point? It's an opinion of judgment. It hasn't moved to a final judgment yet.
Right, how far is too far? I think we need to consult.
I'm sorry? There you go. Everything's already 95% great, you know, it's like, okay, the rest of it.
We're never going to get perfect. You're waiting for perfect. You are in the wrong room.
She said she's on some kind of a blood thinner. But she did not.